Hi everyone, I'm really pleased that today I'm going to be introducing you to a fantastic songwriter from Australia. He's called William Crighton, and although he's very busy at the moment with lots of exciting things I'm sure he'll tell us about, he's made the time to have a wee chat today, which is great. So hi William, it's great to see you.
Hey Kim, great to see you too. And hello people.
So how's your week been, William?
It's been good. It's been pretty busy. We've been up north here in Australia. Some gigs here have started now, so reduced capacity, but we're just doing some gigs. I remember in our interview, which we had a chat about, I was up there. That was the first night of gigs, and I've done 2 since then. So, you know, slow steps, but working on it. And we took the kids and Jules, and we spent a lot of time up there. And I always love getting up north in New South Wales. It's a beautiful spot.
Great, that sounds lovely. And you've had a new single out this week as well, is that right?
Yes, we put out a song called Your Country, which is a song that I wrote just about, you know, my love for the country, meaning the earth and the land, not so much the nation, even though I love Australia, but it's just about looking after the land, you know, and looking after the water, and it's come to that time where it's critical for me that it was at the front of my mind, you know.
Great, it's amazing that you've managed to put all those thoughts into such an effective song, and it's really getting out there. It's great to see it on the telly in Australia as well.
Oh yeah, you know, it is getting out there. I mean, you know, it's not there. I just said exactly what I was feeling in that song, you know, pretty straight to the point. Not a lot of poetry in it, but it's sort of just exactly how we were feeling. And just with the rage of what's going on here, I mean, I can comment for here. I can't necessarily say what's going on where you are, but it's just there's a lot of expansion of coal seam gas and all that sort of thing here, what we're trying to stop and trying to stop it getting into, you know, some wilderness and also just, I mean, it's not a clean way to do things anyway, but especially when you're losing some beautiful wilderness because of it.
Yeah. And that was something I really wanted to ask you about, actually. Your songs in general, as well as this single, seem very sort of socially and politically engaged. And that really appeals to me. But I was wondering, what do you see as the role of the songwriter these days?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's to be honest with yourself and just and share your experience and your emotions. I suppose, you know, it's for me that's what it is. You know, just being truthful and honest with people and talking about things and bringing light to things that people may not have heard about in the context of that, and just, you know, bringing people together as well. You know, and I think as important is our role as artists, and even though, you know, sometimes I do write songs that you could say are I hate the word political, but what you just said, I forget the term you just used, but that resonated with me. You know, just talking about what's going on around us. You know, what we're here, being that we have scientists telling us about all of the problems with what's going on, but also how we can fix it. So, you know, then it's up to artists to talk about that as well.
Thanks.
In the emotional space.
Yeah, it's a different. It's really interesting bringing those things into a different kind of zone for people in a way. I wanted to ask you as well about the coronavirus pandemic and how is that affecting what you usually do as an artist at the moment?
Oh, you know, it's changed everything here. For a long time, there were no gigs, no shows. Now there's just starting to be shows, but they're reduced capacity. There's still a lot of positivity in the room, I have to say, though, which is, you know, a wonderful feeling. I wasn't sure how it was going to play out as far as, you know, a room that would usually fit 300 or 400 people having 60 or 70 capacity. People are spaced out, but there was a lot of love. People were definitely keen to hear the music. So it's changed it in that way. I mean, it's just the whole guts has dropped out of it, really. People are scrambling to try and come up with ways to do things, but, you know, we're artists, we just evolve, and And if we can't play music for a while, we'll do something. We'll do something else to get by. We'll still play music. You can't take that away from us. But we'll just, we evolve, and songs continue to be needed to be written, and feeling doesn't stop.
True, very true. That leads me nicely on to, I was wondering if there was a pivotal moment when you decided that you wanted a career as a songwriter and as a professional musician. And were there any other potential career paths that you almost went down, or alternatively might go down in different circumstances?
Oh, it's I love the bush. I love being out in nature. But I've done all sorts of things. I've done furniture removal. I've worked in the odd bar. Done farm work of all sorts. And different sorts of bit of you get by doing things. I don't know what I would do. I think I have a real interest in gardening and growing things, and I think that if music wasn't so present in my life, I'd do more of that in a professional space. I also like to teach and whatnot. I teach in prisons some music and songwriting and whatnot with my wife Jules. We do that, and the moment I really stopped caring about a career in music is when I started to have a career in music, which is a weird thing to say, but I just found my music got so much better, even though I wasn't trying to be anyone. I just felt like when I decided that, I wasn't even really that conscious. That's the way we sort of started out. But for a while, when you're young, it'd be good to be in a band, be famous or whatever. And then you realize, well, actually, it's the music that, you go back to being a kid. It's like the music, what is the thing, the power in the music, and I'm going to be doing that whether people are coming to see me or I'm getting paid to do it or not. And so then I just tried to be the best I could be at doing that and telling stories. And then the music, I think, became more interesting because it was more honest and I was better. And so it was worth people coming to see what I had to do.
I'm fascinated by what you said about being honest and telling stories, and I feel a lot of connections with you, William. Not just the kind of, actually, I'm a lover of gardening myself. I've got an allotment here in Scotland, and growing fruit and veg keeps me very happy, and it's been my total saviour during the lockdown. It's been the one thing that's really kept me feeling like purposeful and useful, even when I couldn't physically be near anybody at all, sort of thing. And also the prison work, that's been something I've found to be, I've been lucky enough to do over the last kind of 10 years or so.
Wow.
Not in the last couple of years, but like a prison choir for under 21-year-old women in Scotland here. And then there's been a great organisation in Scotland called Vox Liminis that I was involved with in the outset. And it was things like family singing with dads who are in prison to sing with their partners and their kids, kind of thing. So I think there's so many levels. I felt instantly with your music that I was connected to it. But it's really interesting to find out that we've got some other things in common too. But story for me is like the centre of what I'm trying to do as a songwriter too. So it's fascinating to hear you talking about that, and it's lovely to feel some kind of connections with you. I really think your songs are they're really powerful and dramatic. I wonder, are there particular musical influences that you've had growing up that has brought you to there, or is it more connected to the kind of that honesty and communicating what matters to you that brings that drama to your work, do you think?
I don't know. I think definitely beforehand, growing up, you have idols, you have people who you love. And for me, I started singing, I'd go to church with my nan and whatnot. And even though I don't go to church anymore, but that singing as a group and doing that was something that definitely resonated with me. And then, my dad would be playing country music and my mum would have the radio and she loved country music. So all of a sudden, you're hearing that, and that's sort of what you're in, that storytelling, and you're influenced by. I was always influenced by by artists who told stories like Johnny Cash or Willie Nelson, or just those stories that were John Williamson, Slim, all that what I heard. But then as I grew up, you find different idols, and then you go through stages of trying to sound like your idols, or at least whatever. And then you realize why you like your idols, or at least I did, is because they're just being themselves. And they're the ones who are shining through to you. So hang on a minute, just be yourself and be honest with yourself. And of course, I wear some of my influences on my sleeve sometimes and whatever. But, you know, it's just that journey of just trying to find out who you are. And then once you kind of get an idea on that, it's forever changing for me a little bit. But to be able to sort of translate that into a song and put your stories and observations into that form, you know, I guess then you come up with your own sort of thing. But not to say that that's not going to change, you know. My sound's still evolving, hopefully, you know. And it's, you know, talking about what you're saying, I think that is fascinating about the prison work too. That's interesting. It's a cool thing to do. Like I probably get more out of it than the fellas who I work with. But you know, that's a whole thing, you know. You really see the power of music in that context.
Yes, absolutely. I think there's a whole thing around isolation, and maybe not just the kind of isolation that prisoners experience, but the same thing maybe in care homes, for example, here. But people who are isolated in so many ways, I feel like music's just such a great way of connecting. It's not, or like I'm quite shy, and I think that the whole group singing thing you were saying about church, that was the same for me growing up as well. That's how I came to music, and actually how I learned the guitar and the flute and stuff was all in church singing groups, which were so welcoming and fun to be in. And you know, and also nobody, I think I was a total belter when I was wee, like really loud and really out of tune singing, but nobody stopped me, which was really nice. So grateful for those sort of group singing opportunities. But I think also, like, if you're shy and you're quite isolated socially, if you can come and sing in a choir, you don't have to be like super chatty, you don't have to have, you know, loads of confidence. You can come and join in with something without feeling that you have to put yourself out there too much. So I do feel, yeah, music's such an amazing tool for like social benefit in loads of different contexts, and super rewarding for people who get to, like us, who get to deliver that work. It's just it's a blessing to be able to do something that feels purposeful and joyful.
100%. And I think what I see also in that with the group singing, but also having in isolation, having just an instrument, you know, I've noticed with my kids and with myself and with the inmates too, is that even when they're by themselves with the instrument, they might be isolated from other people or doing whatever, but there's a whole world in their own music that they can travel with and they can go to and experience all different sorts of things, and they haven't even left their immediate room or whatever, you know. That's pretty inspiring, and I get inspiration from watching the kids do that too. You know, I'm 35 and we had kids pretty young. Like my eldest daughter is 11 and my youngest daughter is 7, and they, you know, get on the drums and they play and they're writing songs about the environment too. And you know, it's really that inspires me, you know, that, because I remember that as you get older, that core inspiration, that core heart, you know, that the world's like picking away at that for a bit and trying to box it in a little bit, and you can get down, but seeing that joyous thing in kids and that connection to Mother Earth that they have is inspiring.
Yeah, and I think that the one thing I think is really powerful, just coming back to your, you know, you mentioned that your work's still evolving, you're still evolving, and that whole thing of stories, I feel like especially in prisons, songwriting projects where people who are in prison can actually tell their story, speak to their experiences and what's happened to them so far, but also like write their future story. So rewrite their sense of themselves and where they're going. And that seems to me like songs have got so much potential in that respect, that you can create your future world or your aspiration, you can put it out there and even be seen, not just being seen anymore as a prisoner, but actually being seen as someone who's got a story and a storyteller. And I feel like that's such a powerful thing, that songs enable people to kind of write themselves and rewrite themselves and maybe write their ending, you know. Sorry, I'm waffling now.
No, you're not. It's true, you know, songs, and they're not just, for me, songs aren't just about, you know, whether people like them or not. They have many roles, you know. You know, you might write half the songs I write, people don't probably, you know, wouldn't even want to listen to, but they've served a purpose for me to write them for me, you know. And then they might, you know, or there's some other way of doing it, or there's some other thing that might spawn off writing that song that affects someone else. And they're not all just for the single use, you know. They're nuanced, and there's a plethora of things, you know, that they're here for. And they've been with us forever. You know, every culture's got songs. And I think when you talk about what's the role of artists these days, is to be true to the source and to be the song people of our time, you know, of our time. And don't compromise your songs for, or your message or your truth for to sell records, because in this expanse of time, that stuff is going to be a lot less meaningful than the songs that survive, that people sing to each other around the campfire or around the dinner table or wherever.
Wise words. I wonder, William, do you have a kind of typical songwriting process?
Yeah, like in a way, sometimes, you know, I like to just see what comes, you know, have a hang in the shed and sort of have the piano and play the guitar and see what comes out. Or sometimes I'll see a story or I'll think of a story, or I'll dream up something, or, you know, and it'll present itself. But I find if I just shut up and listen to things in the world, then the songs sort of come to me. And as soon as I fall into the trap, sometimes you get a bit egotistical about it and try and write, you know, force it. And sometimes you have to force it, I think, to finish things. But, you know, listening is probably my process, and then listening and then trying to figure out what to do next. I learn songs too, you know, learning covers teaches you a lot sometimes.
Almost every songwriter that I've ever asked that question to has a completely different process, and it's so amazing that you can approach writing songs in a myriad of ways that all work, you know, that all lead somewhere really exciting and interesting. And I always feel it's like fertilizer a little bit when you hear about how someone else approaches a song, that you can then think, oh, what would William Crighton do, you know?
Yeah, all right. I mean, what's your process? What do you do?
Tends to be the lyrical idea first, or it tends to be kind of like a big concept first. And I suppose that's what the listening bit, I think, is the same for me. I very much approached the songwriting more like my dad was a builder and my mum was a seamstress when she was younger. And I see it totally as a kind of craft thing. So I try and kind of build it up, like decide what kind of, if it was a building, what kind of, would it be a cathedral, or am I building a shed or a floaty kind of movable tent today sort of thing, and try to come at it that way kind of thing. But often there's a lyrical kind of nugget that I'm starting from, I suppose, and that's the bit that's the hardest. I think the rest for me is the kind of graft. But if you've got something worthwhile that you want to communicate, I think that's the bit that needs all the listening to take in what's important and what matters right now to me personally, or what I feel matters to the people around me at this time, kind of thing.
That's cool.
Now, William, I know you've got Scottish ancestors, and they built this castle really near to where I grew up. So I didn't know that until meeting you. But looking up this castle, Blackness Castle, it says that the Crichtons were the most powerful family in Scotland in the 15th century. So strong stuff. And
strong stuff. There you go. I have to check that out. I remember checking that out. Did you find out anything else?
Yeah, just outside. So the Crichton Castle that's named for your family, which I suppose would have been the family home at some point, that's just outside of Edinburgh, and the kind of in near Path Head, so just outside of Edinburgh, really. And I wondered, have you ever been to Scotland? And if you haven't, will you come over and I can take you and show you your castles?
Well, I mean, I've been once, and I went. And here's the strangest thing, is that we were driving. We went to, somehow we ended up in Carlisle, and we were heading to Edinburgh Fringe Festival to catch up with some friends, because we were playing at Boomtown the week before or whatever, and my mate Beans on Toast was going up to the Fringe Festival, and then there was another thing happening. I forget what that was that we're going up. And anyway, so unbeknownst, I had no idea. And we're driving along, and I just see a sign to Crichton Castle. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. I've heard it. And so we just went there and just had a look for a couple of hours. And it was such a strange feeling. Like, you could feel it. I could feel it. And it was an interesting thing, just the ground is up there. I felt at home, even though I'd never been there before, not necessarily in the castle, but just the land. I felt similar to where I do here in Australia when I'm around, which is like, I just feel this, I don't know, it's like a warmth or something. And, but yes, I would love you to show me some other sites. We go back to the castle.
Yeah, you could show me your castle, actually. That would be fine.
Yeah. And show me yours.
I don't have one. I don't have one.
But you had a story about a murderous thing too, because the guy who built that castle, his son, was a bit of not a nice fella, and he's my namesake.
Yeah, I did find out a wee bit about that, because I think if I understood it right, it was called like the Black Dinner, and it was kind of like a power grab for the throne. And I think your family member was involved in inviting somebody to dinner who then was sort of dragged outside and given a sort of fake trial and beheaded in order to secure power for somebody else. Sorry if that sounds a bit harsh.
No, and apparently it influenced the Red Wedding on Game of Thrones. I read somewhere too. So I mean, it's a horrible sort of thing to do, but they were strange days. I mean, strange days now, but what a horrible thing to do. But apparently he was no good. But apparently his dad was all right. So I don't know. I'm clinging to that.
Hold on to that. That's a good plan. Yeah, my family were actually, on my dad's side, were cattle thieves in the borders apparently. So stealing from the English to sell to the Scottish and vice versa. They had no kind of discrimination in that sense. They would steal from anyone and sell to anyone. But yep, there's a bloody dagger is my family kind of crest thing, and apparently an Edgar did stab somebody in the back and kill them in a church. Anyway, moving swiftly on.
I mean, this could be a whole nother subgenre of podcast.
Just for another day, maybe. I wonder, where do you? I don't ever do this kind of forward planning, but do you have a vision of where you see yourself 5 years from now?
It's too hard. I think there's definitely things that I want to do and goals that I have, but I won't be disappointed if I'm not there, because life sends you twists and turns, and sometimes it knows a lot better than you do of where you should end up. And I think if I could just continue to try and stay open to that, I think, and not close myself off too much to that, and try and continue to just be a decent artist and a decent dad and a decent gardener, good husband, and and make mistakes but learn from them. I think if I continue that, then I guess we'll just sort of see where it ends up. There's no big grand plan, I definitely want to do a few things and all of that, but that's the main thing. I think the world is going through some changes, so it's important to just remember your size in the whole thing. I'm pretty small, just try and be happy. That's my goal.
You seem to be a very wise person to me, William.
I've listened to wise people, so a lot of what I say is just an accumulation of things that have resonated with me that other people have told me.
Hopefully, some people who are connected with me might want to keep up to date with you going forward. So how can people do that?
On my website, on my, on the social media platforms, I'm only on 2. And then on my website. That's the best way. Hopefully there'll be some gigs. I've got an album in the works that'll be coming out in some point in the future, in the next probably in the next 3 or 4 months. And yeah, if people are interested, they can check that out on Instagram or Facebook or yeah, my website, I suppose.
That's great. William, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks so much for having me, and it's been great to get to know you, Kim. And I'm sure if you're ever here in Australia, come and visit us, and we'd love to show you around.
Likewise, you're always welcome here in Scotland. Thanks a lot.
Return to Scotland. All right.
Take care.
You too. See ya.